Live streaming is on.
Donc on a un Français dans l'équipe, deux Français dans l'équipe.
Hi everyone, welcome to Undercurrent News' latest webinar, Farm Salmon Market Outlook from the holidays into 2021. We last touched upon the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the farm salmon market back in May, when there was a lot of uncertainty. Well, 7 months later, the future is still very unclear. There are some certainties. Retail demand will continue to be strong in both Europe and the US, and production from Chile will come down. However, there's a lack of clarity about the extent of the drop from Chile and also its frozen stock situation. In addition, it's not clear how quickly the food service markets in Europe and the US will recover from the impact of the pandemic. It's also not clear if consumer sentiment in China has been damaged by ties, unfair or otherwise, made between COVID-19 and salmon and other seafood. Then, as the panel can discuss more later, there's also some uncertainty around the EU and US markets for Christmas. If sales are slower than expected, that will leave companies with stock and influence the prices in the first quarter. We've got a great panel to discuss all these issues and more today. Before I ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today, Marel. Marel is one of the main processing equipment suppliers to the seafood sector. If you want to find out more about Marel, you can find details on the sponsor section of the webinar page. So now to the panel. Can everyone give a brief introduction of yourself and your company, please? Maybe I should introduce myself. I'm Tom Seaman, the editorial director and co-founder of Undercurrent News. And then maybe Arild, you could kick us off and give an introduction to yourself.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Arild. I'm head of global sales and marketing in Cermaq. Cermaq is the second biggest producer in the world of Atlantic salmon. We have production in Chile, Canada, and in Norway.
Thanks, Arild. Cédric, maybe you could introduce yourself and Labeyrie.
I'm Cédric. Hi, good afternoon. I'm in charge of buying fish for Labeyrie Fine Food Group, which is processing fish in France, in UK, but also having other operations, doing duck products, aperitif products in Europe and in Benelux.
Thanks, Cédric. Daniel, maybe you could give us an intro to yourself and Blumar.
Yes, hi, afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Daniel Montoya. I'm the sales and marketing director for Blumar. Blumar is one of the biggest integrated seafood groups in Chile, with operations in fishing and salmon farming, and a total turnover in the level of 500 million.
Thanks, Daniel. Sebastien, maybe intro yourself and direct Ocean, please.
Yes, I am 40 years old, looks younger, but okay. I am the general manager of Direct Ocean, a 40 years old company based in Boulogne, specialized in the salmon. I used to work, I spent all my career in the seafood business. Direct Ocean is doing sales amount of 80 million every year, 19 persons, one office in Chile. The headquarters is in Boulogne, in the north of France. 80% of what we do is frozen product, 20% is fresh product, fresh salmon. 1/3 of what we buy is coming from Chile, 1/3 from Nordic countries, like Norway, Scotland, and so on. 1/3 from China, double frozen, pink and chum. And in terms of customer, 1/3 industrial customer, 1/3 food service, and 1/3 supermarkets.
Well, thanks, Sebastien. Thanks, everyone. So before we get to the panel discussion, I'm going to do a quick presentation giving some data on prices as well as trade and supply, which will hopefully set the scene for the panel discussion. All the data is available on Undercurrent News, and I'm going to whiz through the presentation in order to get to the panel. Everybody who's registered will get a copy of the presentation after the webinar too. The presentation will take about 10 minutes, and then the panel discussion will take around 50 to 60 minutes, which will allow plenty of time for questions from the audience. So you can ask questions where you logged into the webinar platform. You can ask questions there, and we'll kind of be accumulating those questions as we go on through the webinar, and then we'll get to all of those questions in a Q&A at the end. So please, fire away throughout the webinar. Just sharing the screen. Is that working fine for everyone?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so let's quickly summarize the situation, which I did briefly in the intro anyway. We've got a generally uncertain picture on supply and inventory levels. Retail demand is very strong for farm salmon, but it's really not clear how fast food service will recover. And this depressed food service demand is then causing the low prices we've been seeing, especially for the large size fish. And pricing is where we're going to start the data we'll show you. We'll start with Norwegian pricing. As you can see from this data, it's been a pretty low year for Norwegian pricing. Seam pricing in the 3 to 6 kilogram size is currently at currently week 47 is at about 45, which is up week on week, but it's down 26% year on year. We've seen pricing really come down further on the bigger fish, as you can see here. We've got pricing for the 6 to 7 kilogram fish, which is down 29% year on year, and that's because of the higher exposure to food service of the bigger fish. You can see here the actual convergence really between the big size fish in green here, the 6 to 7, and the 3 to 4. You can see the prices basically coming to the same level at this point in time. There was a period where this happened earlier in the year, and then when we saw the food service sector open up over the summer, prices then increased for the big sizes, and then they've kind of come down again as the food service sector has also kind of, I guess, closed down again, as you could put it. Now looking at the Chilean price levels for the trim D fillets going to the US, which is the main product for Chile. Prices have been extremely low this year, as you can see from this chart. The price is although there's some optimism in the sense that the price is now firming up. We're seeing slightly higher level in the run up to Thanksgiving than you'd previously see. And as we'll touch upon later in the panel, it's extremely unusual for the prices to rise before Thanksgiving. So that is some sort of cause for optimism, I guess. Now looking at Brazil, which is the second largest market for Chile, you can see again very, very low pricing picture. And I mean, this chart doesn't show it, but we've got data on the site which shows that the levels are probably, well, the lowest they've ever been in the time that we've been recording data on the sector. So that goes back to 2012, potentially the lowest level ever. But they're rising again. So price in week 47 was just over $3 per kilogram, which is a slight increase, as you can see there. But it's almost half the level the price was at this point in 2019, and the same point in 2018, the price was more than double this current level. So turning to Scottish salmon, can also see here that the prices for the big fish and the small fish have really converged in the past few weeks. In fact, you've seen both around £4.10 for the most recent data that we had, on an average, which again is the low food service demand driving this kind of drop in the big sizes and convergence with the smaller sizes. So now let's look at some trade data, some trade flow data, which also comes from our site too. So looking first at Norway, you can see here that the red line illustrates the sort of average export price coming down from week 29. but very healthy volumes for fresh salmon exports from Norway. So, close to 820,000 tons have been exported through week 47, which is up 3% year on year. Then when you look at the average price, it's only down 3% year on year. As you can see from this data, the price was much higher in the start of the year before the impact of COVID on the food service sector was really felt. Then looking at the Norwegian sales to the EU, which is the main market for Norway, actually, according to the data up to week 47, there's an increase of 1% to 687,000 metric tons, which is pretty impressive. And there's been a couple of weeks over 19,000 tons exports, one over 20,000 tons of exports. And if you look at 2019, there wasn't a single week where exports went over 19,000 tons. So it shows that this low pricing has been driving some serious volumes. Then looking at Norway's sales to other markets, the two largest markets outside the EU, the UK and South Korea, volumes are up. UK is up 2%, 53,000 tons. South Korea is up 7% to 21,000 tons. So quite a considerable increase there. And then the next two biggest markets outside of over Europe, China and Japan, you've got China down 32% to 15,000 tons. But as we'll touch upon later, Norwegian volumes to China are increasing again. And then Japan is down 20% to 11,500 tons. Now looking at Chile, looking at some Chilean kind of trade flows. January to September, looking at volumes of trim D fillets exported to the US. There's a 7% increase in the January to September period to just over 100,000 tons, which is pretty impressive. But then the value of that, according to trade data, is down 9% to $963 million, which is obviously reflective of the lower pricing. And then looking at Chile sales to Brazil, which is the next largest market, sort of less up-to-date data, and I could only get value data, not volume data. But the value data shows a pretty precipitous decline this year. We've seen January to July, which is the latest figures, 32% drop in export value to $209 million. But as we can touch upon later in the panel, from what we've been hearing from sources, there's been a kind of sizable increase in volume, certainly going into the Brazilian market from Chile, trucks going into Brazil from Chile. Now looking at the Chinese market for Chile, which is also was a kind of significant market for Chile, been a real decline in the fresh salmon sales from Chile to China, which again we can touch upon in the panel. You can see here in red is the figures from Chile, which the chart really speaks for itself as to how much this has come down. And the trade data shows that in October it was only 131 tons went from Chile to China, which is the lowest level since March 2014. The reason for that is sort of shown here, really. It's because, well, the Chinese are all food going in is having to be fumigated, and that process adds a couple of extra days onto the process, which kind of means that Chile's struggling to compete on fresh salmon with Australia and Norway, who are obviously able to get to the market faster and have kind of replaced these volumes from Chile. You can see here on this chart, the green is Norway and the light blue is Australia, and you can see there just how much they've kind of really replaced the Chilean volumes. And in fact, Australia, with the data up to October, Australia is almost past Chile in terms of volumes. There's 7,400 tons sent from Australia in the period, compared to 7,490 from Chile. Now turning to look at the supply, which is kind of the final piece of this presentation before we get to the panel. First of all, the big question really is just how much Chilean production will drop in 2021. We recently reported on different views from two consultancies, Chile's Aquabench and Norway's Kontali. Both agree that Chile will be down, but to varying degrees. In 2021, Aquabench is predicting a 24% drop to 608,000 metric tons, whereas Kontali is predicting a 10% drop to 680,000 metric tons. This is this is, I think Kontali recently has released another report where they might be predicting a slightly steeper drop, but we can maybe touch upon that in the panel. And then in terms of Q4, Aquabench is much more bullish, predicting 223,000 tons in Q4, whereas Kontali is predicting 190 in Q4. You can see Kontali in green there and Aquabench in Kontali in kind of yellow, Aquabench in green on the right. And then Mowi also released an interesting forecast in Q3. Obviously, the world's largest salmon farmer. They've got a pretty good sense of what's going on production-wise globally. Mowi is probably more in line with Kontali for Q4 on Chile, giving an average forecast of 171,000 tons. That would mean production of 681 to 685,000 tons in 2020, or a growth of sort of 9 to 10%, with then global production growing 3 to 4% to around 2.4 million metric tons in 2020. And then Mowi gave a forecast for 2021 as well, estimating between a 1% drop globally and 3% growth, which would give production ranging from 2.38 to 2.49 million metric tons, with a 5 to 10% drop range in Chile, which is sort of somewhat between the Aquabench and Kontali forecasts. Here we've got the numbers for Norway from Mowi as well, forecasting production of between 1.208 million and 1.22 in 2020, which would be a 1 to 2% growth. And then in 2021, growth of between 1 and 5%, so between 1.235 and 1.275 billion metric tons. Big question really is the stock levels in Chile, and this is something that we will be chatting about later on the panel. Mowi estimated a 55,000 ton stock position currently in Chile, and then that was in its Q3 report. And then Carnegie, which is a investment bank based in Sweden, I think a Nordic investment bank, they recently said that in their view the current biomass for harvest in Chile is extremely high, a big volume of biomass, over 4 kilograms available for harvest, which led them to kind of project that inventory levels over the next kind of 12 months would actually be between 60 and 100,000 metric tons, so kind of higher than the level guided for by Mowi. So what next? This is where we're going to get to the panel and start seeing what our great panelists think is going to happen as a next stage. So we're finished here in the presentation by looking at various supply scenarios put forward for Q4 in 2021. I'd like to get some comments from the farmers, first of all, on the panel on this. So, Arild, Cermaq's farming in... Hello? Cermaq is farming in Norway, Chile, and Canada. What's your view on supply in 2021 from these countries? And where do you sit on how much Chilean production will be down next year?
Yeah, and thank you for the question, Tom. It is, of course, hard to predict, but historically we have looked more at Aquabench numbers when it comes to the prediction for the Chilean volumes, and looking at the stocking numbers, which is quite reliable, and we do see more in the line with what Aquabench is reporting. So we are expecting it to happen quite fast, and we're probably coming back to that. But it's a lot of big fish ready for harvest now in Chile, and we're seeing that getting into the market. But things are about to change, because after that big fish is harvested, then you see the stocking basically from starting of the year getting into the market, and that's much lower. So it's not that kind of rocket science, in the sense that it depends on how much fish was put out in the sea, and that has gone drastically down first half of 2020. So we do strongly believe that the numbers that Aquabench is reporting is more in line with what we think as well. If we move down to Norway, it's we don't see any drastic growth in Norway. There are limitations on the volumes being able to grow, basically, and as every year, it depends a bit on the biology coming into the spring and summer as well, how things are developing. That is very much deciding what kind of volumes we can expect out of Norway. So that is the short version on where we see the market. Or the volumes.
What about for Q4 then, Arild? What do you see in the shorter term?
I think it would be interesting to see how fast it will take before the big fish out of Chile is being done. Basically, there's been a very good biological situation in Chile, so it's a lot of big fish available, and that's why we see the extremely low prices in Brazil as well, because it's been an oversupply to that market, because there are not too many options, as you touched upon, with China being limited as well, and Russia is another option for the big fish, which has been decreasing as a market. So it depends on how fast that fish is being harvested out. I think what we see now with the price increases in the US is that, given the US is preferring smaller fish, that we are seeing less supply into that market, and hence the increase in prices even leading up to Thanksgiving, which is normally a very weak period for seafood and for salmon.
Okay, thanks a lot, Arild. Daniel, maybe you could pick this up and give us your sense from a Chilean producer's point of view of what you see happening in Q4 and then 2021.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Well, Q4 started with a very strong October in terms of harvest. I think almost 78,000 tons. Based on the volumes that were dispatched from the Santiago airport in November, we see a slight decrease in the freight volume. Also, better prices in Brazil, which suggest the harvesting volume for November and probably also December will be lower than October. I think this is because of the high absenteeism we are experiencing in our plants after 9 months battling with the COVID protocols. I think everyone has had a very tough year, and our workers are also struggling with their situation at home. So I think this is affecting the total volume these months now. But anyway, I think the fourth quarter will be our highest historical high in Atlantic salmon, with volume in the level of 210,000 to 220,000 tons. Now for next year, as Arild said, because of the lower small release in the first half of this year, we will see lower volume, and there's a discussion how much this decrease will be. I think we always have to be careful with the projections. I was looking at last year's projections. We were supposed to grow about 2 to 3% in Chile this year, and actually we're growing probably more than 15. So we look at all the projections. We don't think the increase in productivity will continue at as we have seen over the last 12 months. So we could easily see a reduction of 100 to 130,000 tons for next year, which is a similar drop compared to the 2016 algae bloom. So it's pretty big.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Daniel. Thanks, Arild, too. Be good now to turn to look more downstream. Cédric, Labeyrie is one of the biggest salmon buyers in Europe, and Christmas is the biggest sales period for smoked salmon. And what's your feeling on demand for Christmas?
Thank you for your question, Tom. I think it's difficult to answer that question without looking back at 2020 and what happened during the crisis. In Labeyrie Fine Foods, we are lucky enough to rely on several products, not only fish, but also meat products, aperitifs, operating in various countries. And I think that was key during this year crisis. what we are seeing for Christmas now is that we are advertising in France more than any other brands on TV, on social medias, and what our consumer insight is telling us is that in France, 7 or 8 people out of 10 cannot see a Christmas dinner without salmon. But will there be less people around the table? Probably. And the question will be, how will these people buy? What kind of fish, what kind of salmon they are going to buy? And I think one key learning for us during this year is that people will buy less, but will look for buying better. And by better, my point is better quality, but also better products when it comes to sustainability, better products for their own health, for environment, for fish welfare. So for us, that's the key learning of 2020 and the main outlook for Christmas.
So have you seen a kind of more uncertain picture in terms of, I guess in last year and previous years, things would have been following a predictable pattern in terms of, the quantities of retail orders and things like this and the way it was structured. Are you seeing this year that kind of being broken down somewhat and things happening, much more, on a piecemeal basis and, smaller orders and people ordering, leaving things a bit later? Is that kind of how you're seeing things in the market?
What we are seeing now is that with people having to work from home, if you get a family of 4 people, instead of just having to buy proteins for 1 meal per day, so 4 meals, you have to buy 2 meals per day for the whole week. So that's like more than 50 meals per day. And definitely smoked fish is a good alternative, a good source of protein. So that's a trend that we've seen with the increase of home office and people being locked down in the UK and in France. When it comes to uncertainty, yes, surely COVID crisis for all companies has put a lot of uncertainty, but I think all around the table in the food sector have been one of the key priority of people and of government has been food.
And then we're going to just kind of discuss raw material stock levels at some point, but what about the stock levels in Europe? I mean, do you think it's possible that there'll be stock ending up being carried into 2021 for processors because orders orders won't be as high as they would have been in previous years, or just give us a bit of a sense about that?
It's very, very difficult to say, Tom. I say that the main thing is that here we are all talking about salmon. I would say from Labeyrie Fine Foods perspective, there is not only one salmon market, one salmon as a commodity, but several kinds of salmon. And what we are focusing on, I would say, is premium salmon. And back to the points that I was making just before, I think when you're speaking about demand in your presentation, about offer and so on, we are seeing salmon as a world market, when actually the way we see it is that there is probably one salmon that people are focusing on, and that's the consumer insight that we are getting in France and in UK, and it's salmon that is raised responsibly.
So you mean people are, the market's less interested in kind of differentiating by origin, you mean? Yeah,
exactly, and focusing really on how the fish was grown. And I think for Christmas, even if there are smaller gathering, what people we want to show is that if you couldn't be shopping for a few weeks, maybe you will buy less because you will get less people around the table. But you will focus on a product that is good for you, good for the environment, and that you're happy to show to your family.
Oh, well, thanks a lot, Cédric. Now, Sebastien, I mean, you're in a position in the sector and the supply chain between the suppliers and the end customers for various salmon products. What's your take on demand, across the different products you supply to the market for Christmas? Sebastien, you're on mute.
How is it now?
Yeah.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, good question. Thank you. Key point, and we will probably speak about that many times, is the diversification of the European market in terms of sales channel. I think Norway and in Europe we are quite lucky because we have so many different kind of users, so many different kind of markets, which is not the case for Chile. Chile had big and huge problems to sell the salmon because most of the final product is used in a restaurant, and it was of course very damaged during the crisis. So I will speak about the French market, but because we are selling to these different channels, I guess it is the same scenario in whole Europe. And in terms of demand, of course, the price decreased quite a lot during since the first since March, let's say, and many supermarket. If we speak about the supermarket part or channel, it was like a very good opportunity, you know, as cheap salmon and big demand. So it was a very good opportunity to improve the quantity in terms of sales, to do a lot of promotion. So if we speak about this part of the business, I think in Europe, in France, it was very good. It was like an opportunity. So that part is very important because I get that big quantity of the Norwegian salmon goes through this channel, sales channel. Then second big channel is the industrial customer, and for them it was quite good year also, and the demand for Christmas will be big, at least bigger than normal year, not so big as supermarket, like if we speak about portions. And the last, of course, channel, catering was, as we know, is in very bad position. But if we speak about between our first lockdown and second lockdown, the salmon was the first product to be promoted during the summer, because salmon in France is, if we speak about frozen, is the bestseller product, top one or top two product. So this crisis with a big impact on the price. Let's speak about minus 20% from Norway in terms of price. It was a good opportunity for many customers, for sure. From Chile, the situation, of course, is completely different. The possibility, you know, to increase the quantity from Chile to Europe is quite limited. Many customers want to buy Norwegian, not Chilean. So even if the price were decreased quite a lot, it was not so easy to increase the sales from Chile. And many Chilean producers tried to sell fresh in Europe, but it doesn't work so easily. I don't think so. But at least they tried. But the market is already well established with, of course, Norwegian and Scottish salmon. So it's the last quarter and this year was very good for some customer and for one part of the demand, of course, very bad for others. It's quite logical. In terms of beginning of Q1 21, same scenario. Low price means higher quantity, bigger sales. Of course, we are waiting the opening of the restaurant, and when it will happen again, the salmon will be probably the first product to put in that the restaurant will select to put in their menu. So when the price is low, like it is today, we have many customers very motivated to sell the salmon again. So I'm not so afraid about the demand again, because the price is low. In terms of price, we are very curious to see how will be the price from Norway when they will reduce their quantity per week. Today it's very big weeks at the moment. We speak about more than 20,000 tons, which is very big. That's one of the reasons, of course, that the price is so low. Less demand and big offer, big quantity from Norway. So let's see how it will be during the Q1. If with week with 15, 16, 17,000, what will be the impact on the price? I think that the price could increase quickly from Norway. I don't think that the stock available on the Nordic fish is so big. I don't think so. At least not suitable for our market. I don't think it will impact so much. From Chile, of course, there is. It looks that the stock is all the cold store are full, but they are full with product that we don't need. Wallfish, big size, and also a lot of skin and fillets. And at the moment, it's not what we need. We need blocks for industrial customer. We need portions for our supermarkets. So on this product in stock, that will be very difficult for the Chilean to increase the price for probably on Q1 and probably Q2. But on other product, specific product like portions or specific fillets, yes, they will probably manage to increase, especially if they manage to decrease their quantity, and also if the price on the US market increases. So very interesting to see. But again, I think we are lucky to have a so diversified market here in France and in Europe.
Well, thanks, Sebastien. Maybe you could just give what your sense is of the stock position in Europe as well. I mean, are companies in Europe holding stocks of salmon as well? You know, unsold volumes for food service. In your view?
We hold in our side, just for your information, something like 10 million euro in stock, you know, for our customer. But everything is already sold. So when we speak about unsold product in Europe, it could be some Chilean, maybe some wallfish. From Norway, really, we are. It's not like a tsunami of offers from Norway. I don't think so. There are, of course, big quantity of salmon from Norway went to Poland for to be produced into portions. But on this specific product, the demand is very big. So to do some stock, if everything is under contract, that's very good. And when you know Norway is shipping trucks to Poland to do portions, it's already booked for the first semester 21. So again, I don't think it will impact so much the possibility of the Norwegian to increase their price during the first semester next year. I don't have this feeling. And again, when there is stock available, it doesn't switch to the demand we have. So today the demand is very specific, grading, size, you know, skin on, skinless, packing, and so on. You cannot take a stock like that and sell to your customer. It doesn't work anymore. And if we speak about the stock in Chile, again, this is an interesting part also. 10 or 15 years ago, you know, the double frozen Atlantic salmon was accepted by the market. It's not accepted anymore, at least in France, maybe in other countries in Europe. But we don't have a customer ready to buy double frozen product today. It doesn't work. So wallfish from Chile processed in China for Europe, not for us anymore. So, but like 10 or 15 years ago, yes, but the market changed. So where, you know, this big fish will go? Good question. We don't know. But it's very big fish, like
6, 7, 8 kilo plus. What to do with that? Difficult to say. They will manage probably to find room, but not for our market.
Thanks, Sebastien. I mean, Daniel, maybe this would be a good time to bring you in to talk about the stock situation in Chile. Can you give us your take on it, please?
Yeah, the stock the inventory level is the best kept secret. Everybody talks about it, and I mean, I think there's no doubt that the inventory has increased in Chile this year because the markets have not been able to absorb the tremendous growth we've had this year. You know, total export of Atlantic salmon has grown the first 10 months 5%, but our harvest has grown above that level. So after April, May, when there were a lot of restrictions in the plants, we saw the inventory come down. But during those months, after that, we've seen the stock grow, but it's starting to move, and we see a lot of activity of the frozen buyers in different markets. I'd say big size fish has a very good market in Asia. And I saw the export volume in October was 25% higher than September for frozen whole fish from Chile. So, and I think November and December will be even higher. So Russia has also been very active the last months. So I think the trend is changing, and the inventory level will start to come down. Europe is not very big market for Chilean salmon, but we're also seeing some of this volume going to Europe.
Okay, well, thanks, Daniel. Maybe Arild, you could pick this up and give a sense of of how and how long you think it will take for these stocks from Chile to be absorbed by the market.
Well, first of all, I think, it's always this talks about, when you talk about the market development, everyone is, the high inventory levels in Chile. So I think this happens at least on an annual basis that is brought up. And if you just used what the movie published with the 50,000 tons, it's less than a month's production out of Chile. So we need to put that into perspective as well, that 50,000 tons might seem a lot, but still, frozen is part of the market for Chilean salmon, and it's a well-functioning market as well. Yes, there have been some challenges for the Chinese market. The Russian market has been down this year, but this is also due to seasonalities. We have seen this year after year that the inventory levels in Chile is going a bit up and down. So what is 50,000 or 100,000 like this analyst in Sweden said? We don't know, but it's always coming up. But what we are seeing is basically that the frozen markets are realizing that the supply is coming down significantly out of Chile, so it's more active than it has been. So I think that is clear that we see that.
So it's not particularly something that's keeping you up at night, by the sound of it.
No, it isn't. As I said, this is a year thing, and we are also seeing a very active Asian market, not necessarily China, but other markets in Southeast Asia is also quite active, realizing that the supply out of Chile is coming down, the harvest is coming down at least. Okay,
thanks, Arild. Maybe you can also carry on here and give us a bit of a take on the US market outlook, kind of going into the past now Thanksgiving, going into the Christmas period. And then into 2021, do you think that the prices will continue to rise, or is that kind of an anomaly? Or just give us your read on how that's going to evolve.
Yeah, but we just touched upon this fact that the supply is coming down. What is 10%, 11, 14? I think is the latest from Kontali, and then you have Aakre bench on 22. So it's significant volumes coming down out of Chile, and no question, retail is significantly growing. We have some scan data from the US market, and we're seeing 30 to 40% increase of salmon, of Atlantic salmon. So if these volumes are coming down now, and of course the processor need to honor the contract in delivering into the retailers. So if the retail market is absorbing quite a bit of these volumes, it will be less volumes available for the spot market. And then you will see the prices increasing and could potentially increase quite significantly as well. So it will be interesting to see. But we are staying on a very positive note on the demand side, given that what we see is a strong home consumption. For the US market, I saw the survey saying that, in the past, 3 out of 4 meals was eaten out of home, while 83% of the meals now are eaten at home, which I think it was Cédric who touched upon as well, that, you're eating more at home. And knowing that the retailers now are focusing on the big four and salmon being one of the winners, growing more than the seafood in general, we're quite optimistic that we are recruiting new consumers to the category. And I saw the survey from Spain as well, showing that we are recruiting a lot of young Spanish consumers because they are the people that normally eat most out, and now they need to eat at home. So we're recruiting young people into the category, which can only, and history is showing that, after a crisis and prices being low, you are seeing that you are recruiting new people to the category. So we are very optimistic in this sense, and seeing that, you have tremendous growth into the US market during the COVID-19, which, we talk about 16% growth into the US market in July, 7% growth into August. So of course, it's when the volumes are coming down, it would be interesting to see how the prices will develop.
Okay, thanks, Arild. Daniel, maybe you could pick this up and give your take on the US market outlook, both kind of short term with Christmas coming up and then 2021.
Yeah, I think it's not different from Arild's view. I think that the pandemic has opened the salmon supply to many new consumers, through retail this year. I also saw these figures, 35-40% growth in retail. Of course, the food service sector is still highly unpredictable, but we see that the lower prices are also being passed to the consumer. So I think that the main drivers of the long-term growth that we've seen in the US over the last 10 years are still valid. We have to maybe look at the economic outlook because unemployment rate is higher, consumer confidence is lower, but overall, I think that the industry has made a big effort in product development over the last years. The pre-packed fresh products have opened, new retailers, and COVID has also pushed, the retail sales up quite significantly. So I'm also positive, on the US market.
With regards to, you mentioned that prices have been passed on to consumers more. Can you give some more details on that? What kind of prices are retailers offering now compared to what they were been offering, pre-pandemic, just generally speaking?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think we were seeing the everyday price from $8.99 to $10.99 a year ago. During the last 3 years, we had relatively high prices. Now we see a lot of $6.99, $7.99, and ads running at $5.99. With the import price below $4, it's of course it's possible to promote salmon at those levels, and this really push sales up significantly.
And also, Daniel, maybe you could tell us a bit about the outlook in Brazil, because those the latest, it's hard to get recent data, or at least it's not widely available recent data. So it looks really bad when you look at those figures up to July. But looking at the pricing we have, the prices are ticking up, and I've been hearing anecdotally that much higher volumes are going to Brazil now. Just give us a bit of a sense about how that market's going, and where you think that's going to evolve in 2021?
Well, yes, it's for the first half, or at least until May, it was a really very pessimistic situation. Volumes dropped in April and May around 40%. Normally, about 70% of salmon is consumed in restaurants, in food service sector in Brazil. But I'm pretty sure once we have the retail sales, we'll see very big increase. The export volume from Chile between June and October grew 14% compared to last year. So they are taking additional volume. You have to also look at their currency, because they suffered a very big devaluation during the first 3-4 months of the year. The real moved from 4 reals per dollar to 5.80, and this is like 45%. Now it's closer to 5.20, and that's also helping. But I'm sure that in Brazil we are also attracting new consumers through retail, and this will help to grow the market.
Yeah, and diversify from the food service, I guess. Back to you. Thanks, Daniel. Back to Europe now. Cédric, and it's fair to say it's been a buyer's market really for 2020, and 2021 certainly looks like it will start that way. With good volumes and low prices. But as a big buyer, what would you like to see from salmon suppliers to sort of win business in this climate, basically?
Thank you for your question, Tom. I think Arild and Daniel have commented on price, so I will not comment on it. Of course, we could say a lot of things about currency, about stock, about the balance of demand and offer. But I think the points that I would like to make is how can we keep together as a full supply chain the new consumers that we've managed to attract. Arild, you were commenting on young Spanish consumers, for example. I think from our perspective, from Labeyrie Fine Foods perspective, we have a strong consumer insight in France, in UK, and I think in your presentation, Tom, you explained that through 2020, Europe and UK have shown a strong support for Norwegian salmon. I've seen an increased share of Norwegian salmon into Europe, for example, due to a limitation of air freight. And what consumers are expecting in Europe is, I would say, a fish, salmon, that is raised in a specific and sustainable conditions. And those conditions, I think we can offer together by working on the full supply chain from feed manufacturers through salmon farmers, processors, and retailers to give to consumers what they will want in 2021. Your question was on 2021, but when we speak about salmon cycle, it's 2-3 years to grow salmon. And I think what we need to think about is the salmon we are going to sell in 2022 and after. And for that, the salmon that we are expecting and that European, French, UK consumers is expecting is a salmon that is good for their own health. We've seen a declining level of omega-3 in salmon for the past 5 or 10 years, and it's something that we must be able to claim and to give to our consumers in the future. We've seen some mistrust in France and in other countries about chemical contaminants. And I think it's something that we need to tackle together. Our also consumer insight, because we are constantly canvassing what consumer wants, and we see more and more questions around fish welfare, especially around these sea lice cruises that we've known for the past 4 or 5 years. with chemical treatments, physical treatments. There are questions around fish welfare. And it's definitely something that as a full supply chain, we need to tackle together to be able to give some trust back to consumers, and again, to keep the consumers that we've managed to attract through this crisis. And finally, I think environmental impact is key. It's key for all businesses, but maybe especially in food. We've seen questions around the impact on seabed, around sea lice treatments impacting seabed, around the impact of farming salmon for wild fisheries. I think that's really the kind of questions that consumers are asking in France and in UK. And what, as a company, Labeyrie Fine Foods, what we are looking for in the coming years is those kind of partnership for the full supply chain to give answer to those questions. There are companies discussing carbon footprint. That will be a key thing that we need to promote for salmon, not only about salmon farming, but for the full chain on feed production as well. When it comes to ingredients in feed that are raised on lands, there are questions around, deforestation when it comes to soya in Brazil, for example, that we need to tackle together as a full supply chain. Question as getting marine components of feed that are sustainably sourced. So for us, that's all those challenges that we need to tackle together. And I think, as I said at the beginning, Europe, I believe, is a key market because what we are seeing from consumers in Europe, we believe it's something that will be, all over the world in the coming years. And due to the length of salmon cycle, we need to work on as soon as next year to be able to offer the fish that consumers will want in the coming 5 or 10 years.
Thanks. Really interesting. Just to quickly move to kind of wild salmon now. So just wanted to kind of ask you about how, you obviously buy quite a bit of wild salmon too. How is that sort of featured in your product mix for this year and for next year? With farm salmon prices much lower and wild higher. How is that featured in your product mix for wild?
Yeah. Thank you for this question. I think it's really in line with what I just said earlier. There's been some mistrust in Europe on how salmon is farmed, and we've seen in the past 7 or 8 years an increase of interest in wild salmon, of the naturalness that wild salmon is giving, and that's we believe is something that will go more and more and strengthen in the future. And here we are talking about farm salmon, and I think that the main answer to that increase of interest of consumers in wild salmon is to try and give and provide farm salmon, which conditions are responsible and that could have the same naturalness as wild salmon, if I can put it that way. Discussing medical treatments, density, pollution of seabed, all those topics. That people are and consumers want to get transparency on. And one thing that is key on those topics, as I just said, is transparency. We've seen in the past 2 or 3 years an increase of food products using QR codes on the packs. With the Labeyrie brand, we've been the first putting QR codes on our smoked salmon packs in France. And giving transparency is the best answer to fight against mistrust and to explain all the good things that we have in our supply chain. Because here I've been focusing on what people are asking questions on, but there are really great things, as you know, in this supply chain. And by giving transparency to people, what we want to do is also just show them what are all the great things that are linked with salmon farming, all about FCR results, environmental status, all the reduction of treatments, vaccination, all the great stuff that is done in Norway and in salmon farming that we want to show to our consumers.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Ed. Maybe, Sebastien, you could just quickly weigh in here on the wild salmon side. Are you seeing a similar thing where there's increased demand for wild salmon because of some of the kind of negative things around farmed? But obviously, I guess the challenge, which you can maybe also address, would be the pricing is very high this year. You know, lower production outside of
Yes.
Alaska and Russia. So maybe you could cover that, Sebastien.
Yes. What we try to do since many years, it's to cover the full range of salmon. So it's why we are offering first price product, salmon, pink and chum, double frozen from China. Raw material is from Alaska or from Russia. So we speak about product. First price product in supermarket for the catering business and industrial customer. Double frozen mean first price product, but still wild salmon, and it's part of the French and European market. And this year it's very special, of course, because of the COVID, but also because of the supply. The main species, when we speak about that type of product, is pink, and this year it was very bad. Let's say it was almost normal year in Alaska, but very bad in Russia. If we compare the quantity of the last season, it's half of the quantity of 2018 and much less compared to last year. So very difficult for the Chinese plant. It's like a new situation because the stock, so historical catch of 2018 and big catch from last year done by the Russian was in stock in Dalian and Qingdao, and it was so easy for the Chinese plant, to take what they are little by little according to what they need, and to pay, again little by little. So quite flexible, and the price was very cheap. Now the price increased by maybe on good mid color pink and chum 30%. The plan, they have to prepay part of the quantity to the Russian. It's a difficult and dangerous business. The Chinese plants are not supported anymore by the Chinese government. They have to be to follow very strict regulation in terms of pollution on water treatment. So that will be very tough for the Chinese plant this year, and many will disappear for sure, and it's not good for the business in general for sure. So on top of that, that China is doing a lot of control of COVID on all the raw material coming from abroad. It's take a lot of time, and it's very costly for the Chinese plant, and it's delay a lot. The supply from abroad for the Chinese and from China for the European. So it's pushing up the price. On top of that, there is big pressure and a lot of stress with this control done by the Chinese government on the raw material. And it's a big problem on the wild salmon, and probably bigger problem on the Alaskan pollock, but it's not the subject of the day. So this is the situation in China. Now, if we speak about the demand in Europe on this first price product, German pink, because of high price, plus 30% on good mid color, many players stop the good mid color and they went to the pale mid color. I'm thinking about the German supermarkets. Okay, it's a choice, not done by the French supermarkets. So it's mean less quantity, especially in a market with cheaper Atlantic salmon from Norway and from Chile. So at the end, it is less quantity coming from China. And one important point that we did not mention before, we speak about the after COVID. Probably many markets will come back as before, but one market will probably never come back as before. I'm thinking about the company restaurants. People will continue to do home office for sure, 1, 2, 3 days per week. So it means less quantity through this channel. And in this channel, there are also a lot of first price product coming from China. So less demand on this specific type of customer. Probably, of course, bigger demand on the supermarket. So we have to deal with that and to be flexible and to follow the demand. That is the most important point for sure. And on the industrial part, the ready meal and the reprocessing company, European, when they are buying wild salmon, they will not go to buy the Atlantic salmon. It is in their specs, in their packaging, so they will continue to buy less quantity simply because the price is higher this year. So, okay, it's a completely different market compared to the Atlantic, but now the Chinese, they are following carefully what is happening on the Atlantic salmon market before buying pink and chum. They did many mistakes in the past, and now they are probably better than before, and they are very careful about that.
You're muted, Tom.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I wanted to pick up on China with some questions on the market, really. So maybe Daniel, you could give us a sense as to what's happened behind the scenes with this big drop in fresh volumes going to China from Chile, and do you think that that Chile can regain some market share there next year?
Well, yeah, it's we've seen a big drop this year. First, after the outbreak in Wuhan in February, March, and then after the COVID outbreak in Beijing mid-June, when they found a positive COVID test on a cutting table, of salmon cutting table. Well, the whole market came down. The Norwegian volume is also significantly lower than last year. But I think with the sampling and fumigation rules, as you mentioned, I mean, this is delaying the clearing process before the product can be sold 2 to 3 days, for fresh fish, every day counts. So Chile, has the longest transit time. So we're being left behind. We're in a disadvantage. We see the Australian supply growing. Well, it's based on the same reason. I mean, they have the shortest transit time, and Australia is producing 20% more salmon this year compared to last year. So it's a natural development for them. I think it will take time, but I'm pretty confident we will recover our share in that market. Not sure about Australia because they are projecting another 10% growth for next year. So they will be, I think, a very active supplier to the Chinese market. On the other hand, well, we are seeing a growth on the frozen side, on frozen imports from Chile, and it's not like we can replace fresh with frozen. I mean, they go to different channels. While we were growing the fresh market during the last 5 years, frozen was still growing double digits. So it's a different channel. Frozen is mainly for further processing into retail products. fresh is mainly sushi restaurants, for raw consumption. So it's not a replacement. I think the frozen business is growing, stimulated by the low prices, and probably the low stocks they were holding because of 2-3 months with very, very low imports. So we have to wait. I mean, again, all the impacts of COVID in the markets is still highly unpredictable. But the news we've been reading the last month, even today, I read that the vaccine is starting next week in the UK, probably in December in the US as well. So I think this is very positive news, and will allow us to recover the market in China and in many other markets, in segments like the cruise lines, the hotels, resorts that have been very depressed this year.
Okay, thanks a lot, Daniel. Arild, just before we get to the Q&A, could you maybe weigh in on the China market view? Because obviously, you're Cermaq's supplying from Norway and from Chile, and you've got those, a broad perspective on it. Do you think that Chilean volumes will come back in? Do you think Australia is going to continue to increase volumes into China too? What's the outlook from your point of view?
Yeah. Well, first of all, starting with the Chilean, I think as Daniel was pointing out, it's a matter of practicalities as well. You don't get the fish tested and cleared before it's getting too old, basically. So that's why you need to see a different testing regime in order for the Chilean fish to be a good solution for the raw consumption, which is 90% of the market in China. We have been, and I have been bold in the past about prior to COVID-19 on the growth potential in China. But I've been very concerned basically is the COVID-19. It started out by linking positive COVID test on related to salmon, and we've seen numbers of links between salmon and COVID-19 in China, meaning that the consumers have been quite skeptical, and some of the retailers have withdrawn salmon from the shelf. However, we have seen positive signs the last 3 or 4 weeks. That you're actually seeing growth year on year from Norway. It's not fully compensating for the lack of Chilean, and also Australian has been down the last couple of weeks with some positive tests on some Australian salmon as well. So it will be very interesting to see Chinese New Year coming up, where it's a really peak period for salmon in China. So it will be very interesting to see how the market is reacting and how much distribution we will see. So still yet to be seen, I have to say.
Yeah, I guess Chinese New Year coming up, and then the demand will be really on the big fish, won't it?
Yeah.
Then so it'll be interesting to see if we see that big fish price going up and returning to normality with the gap between the smaller sizes.
Yeah, exactly. And if China is not coming back, normally you see quite a big supply, and basically the farmers out of Norway is not adjusting their farming to the market, but normally the farmers are reserving some volumes of big fish to the Chinese New Year. And if that demand is not coming, there'll probably be some cheap big fish around during that period.
Okay, thanks, Arild. And that kind of that covers it from the panel. We've got quite a few questions come in for Q&A, so I'll just kick off with those. Question from Christine Gerard from Canada, from Metro Richelieu, basically asking, simple question: when will the drop of Chile's production start? Will it be in Q1 or later on?
Yeah, I think as we mentioned before, the biomass still shows very good volume of fish to be harvested the coming months. So it's probably going to be I would say end of Q1 But especially after Q2, Q3, we will see bigger drops in volume.
Arild, is that your take too?
I think you will see it earlier. You just see on the biomass that there's a historic high volumes of large fish in the sea in Chile. That's what Aquabench is showing. And that's going back to what Sebastien said earlier as well. There needs to be a market for this as well. So for the really big fish, it needs to be harvested out, basically. And as I said, seeing that the prices on the smaller fish is already increasing on Ernaberry in the US, I think you are seeing now less supply from Chile on the sizes that is working in North America.
Okay, and a question from Adolfo Valsecchi in Italy from Generali Conserva. It's a big canning company. He's asking basically, have we hit the bottom in terms of Chilean pricing? Are we at the bottom, or has the bottom not been reached?
I think the bottom was reached some weeks ago. I think the price increase we are seeing in both fresh markets, both big fresh markets, the US and Brazil, 15% and 35% is showing a change in trend. I don't think we're going to come back to the prices we had a month ago.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. And this is probably
that is why.
Sorry. This is probably good.
I just wanted to add that is why
Oh, sorry, Sebastien, carry on.
Yeah. Yes, that is why we are recommending to our customer to buy now and to do some stock, because of course from Norway we see that under it's very under €4 there is a big resistance in terms of price. The price was between 4 and 4.40, but less than 4, it's not. It's very, very difficult. It looks to be there is a big resistance. So when the price is close to 4 from Norway, speak about euro GDP in Europe, we think that it is a cheap price and a good timing to buy. And of course, the situation will be better soon. If we are optimistic, the vaccine will come and the demand will come back. And same from Chile on the stock, saying that it is the cheapest, saying that the price will not continue to go down, difficult to say, but the price will probably increase on specific program and specific product and demand. So yeah, it's a good timing, still a good timing to buy and to do some stock.
Thanks, Sebastien. Sorry to interrupt you as well. Probably one for you, Arild, seeing as you've got the Norwegian and the Chilean perspective. It's a question from Mark Jeffries from Aquastar in the US. He's asking, who has more frozen salmon in inventory, Norway or Chile?
Oh, Norway is historically there's next to nothing of capacity to frozen storage in Norway. So I think I don't know the numbers exactly, but I would guess 95% of the volumes out of Norway is going as a fresh. So if there's any stock, it will be as you pointed out earlier, it will be with the processors who already bought the fish or with a trader in Europe. But basically, Norway's supply is fresh, and if it's frozen, it's sold in advance. So I would guess it's very little volumes being frozen by the farmers to speculate on higher prices later in the year.
Okay, thanks, Arild. Cédric, I think this is probably one for you. It's from George Lockwood of Ocean Farms in the US. He's asking, what's in your opinion, what's the importance of the organic label for consumers?
Yeah, I think organic label has a strong knowledge for consumers, especially in France, because organic is not only fish, it's not only salmon, but you can buy now almost everything organic. So of course, it's I would say an easy way to spot what is known to be an environmental friendly product. But if you look at the overall organic production in the world, we're just speaking about maybe 2% of world salmon production. So I think the question is larger than just offering a niche product to consumers, but an overall change in practices in salmon farming in order to be able to give more broadly to new consumers and mistrusting consumers a product that is what they are looking for when it comes to responsible sourcing.
Okay, I think this is probably another one for you to pick up, Cédric, as well. It's from James Young of the University of Stirling in the UK. He highlights that you've mentioned increased attention being paid by consumers to attributes such as higher quality, responsible sourcing, and higher welfare. Given retail channel structures, how might these points of differentiation be best communicated to consumers? And what is the willingness to pay for such attributes?
Yeah, I think there are two questions in one here that we can answer in of the way we see it as a company is through brands and through I would say notorious retailers' name in the UK, for example. I think that's the kind of trust that we have to give to consumers, and using brand names to convey clarity on practices and farming practices. That could be done through various kind of advertising. I was just speaking and telling before that on TV or in social media, Labeyrie brand is the one advertising the most in France, especially this year for Christmas in this COVID context. So the way we see it is through brands, retailers' name. And by various way of communicating. I was also speaking about blockchain, QR code. We think it's a good way to convey such informations.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Cédric. Got a question here from Renko Lingman from ING Bank in the Netherlands. He's asking about RAS farming in Europe. Basically asking what the panelists think about the future of RAS-based salmon farming in Europe, including in big importing countries like France. What are the key factors for success, and how will land-based RAS farming ever be economically viable, considering the high capex outlays and a relatively young new technology? I guess maybe someone on the farming side, possibly Arild, you could pick that up from that sort of point of view, and then actually it might be interesting to see what Cédric and Sebastien think about it from a sales point of view, from sales opportunity for land-based salmon.
Well, that was a big question, and we have limited time here, so
5 minutes to go.
But I'll keep it short. Someone will probably get it right sooner or later. From our perspective, the technology is still kind of new. It won't be reliable for some years yet. Let's see how it goes. Of course, it's more in the overseas market that this potential has the highest in the beginning, given that you're saving the air freight costs. But we strongly believe the net ban has a future, given that when you talk about the carbon footprint in Europe, at least, that is the most efficient way and most environmentally friendly as well. Only 2% of the food is coming from the sea, and most of the 72% of the surface on this globe is covered with sea. So we don't think necessarily that the solution, the long term, I'm talking about what Cédric said earlier as well, is moving that kind of production on land. But it will be a supplement, we think so. Yeah.
And then Cédric, from a sales point of view, is it something that you and Labeyrie are kind of, excited about offering to the market in the future? French farmed salmon or land farmed salmon.
What Arild was commenting is right. My understanding is that technology is not fully there, and I think until we understand the details of how salmon will be farmed in such land-based facilities, when it comes to density, when it comes to energy, when it comes to water resources, such questions that I feel are still having question marks behind them. when we'll be able to really compare how sustainable, how responsibly is farmed is farming on land is against farming in water. I think until we have that that level of details, it's not possible to give an answer to your question.
Okay, Cédric, and yeah, we're pretty much out of time here now. So thanks to everyone from the panel for giving up their time this afternoon to share their insights with our audience. And thanks to everyone for tuning in, and have a great afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.